Marley! The cry came over the top of the set like a banshee. This was accompanied by a banging on the flats. The canvas shook under the onslaught of Linton's fists. "Let me in. Just you let me in. Wait till I get hold of you," she howled as her hand tore through the canvas where a window had been painted. After a moment, Linton's mad eye appeared at the hole. "You stupid bugger!" she shouted. "You had one job, and you had to go embroidering all over it, didn't you? Get out of there!" "Madam," said Marley, I don't know what you think I've done." What you've done is buggered up the whole schedule," she said. "Where did you get that rubbish about one spirit every night? We got to get this wrapped up by morning. Do you know nothing?" "No," said Jacob Marley as he slumped into a chair once more. "It seems I do not. Perhaps if I had been afforded more idea of what was expected of me." "Oh, so it's my fault then, is it?" said Linton. "Get him out of there." The face disappeared from the tear in the fabric. Machinery moved in the dark blackness above Marley's head, and ropes pulled and lifted the set up and away. The furniture moved next. The chair he was sitting on, the bed, the mantelpiece, the clock, all stacked themselves neatly at the back of the stage, propelled by some poltergeist force. The stage was empty apart from Linton and Marley, the small band of spectral special effect artists having gone sometime during Marley's scene. "3 nights," said Linton. "I've never heard the like." "Can I go home now?" Marley asked. He felt tired to his bones, and oh, so disappointed with himself that he felt that going back to walking the streets alone would feel like a rest, would feel like home. There was a scratching sound coming from Linton's clipboard, like someone was writing on it, yet no pen was there. She glanced at the page. "No," she said, "you can't. I haven't got the time. You're going to sit this out in the green room like a good boy until the whole thing is finished, and only then will you go back to your penance." And with that, she turned to lead poor Marley back through the corridors. The backstage was now a world of hustle and bustle. No doubt this was because the main production was at last underway. This allowed Marley to lag further and further behind Linton. He had no great desire to go back and drink endless cups of tea and to chatter with assorted non-corporeal spirits, and he believed that if he could slip away from the stage manager's control, then perhaps he could find his own way back to his old life. In fact, Linton paid no heed to Marley at all, striding away at a fierce pace. Eventually, she disappeared round a corner, and when Marley came to it, he found the hallway empty of her presence. Oh, Marley sighed and leaned against the wall, free at last. But by God, he was tired. He thought perhaps there'd be a room somewhere that he could use to get a little rest before trying to find his way back. So he gathered up his chains and walked as quietly as he could back in the direction he'd come from. But try as he might to find a little respite from the tortures of this place, he could not. I mean, every room he investigated was as full of activity as the thoroughfares themselves. The production had gone into overdrive. In one room, a band of imps laboured, making stage furniture, painting and bodging wood and fabric until it resembled a gravestone or a school wall or a hovel. In another, costumes were being sewed and tucked. In the centre of the sewing throng sat Madame Crowle, like a fat spider, fingers clicking and snipping at 3 different costumes at once. When she saw Marley peeping in at the door, she hissed at him, showing off cracked and broken teeth. Marley hastily withdrew. Eventually, at the end of one of the passageways, he saw a doorway that opened out onto a set of stairs that extended downwards and into the darkness. Also, he observed that no spirit was coming in and out as they were at the other doors. He fancied that here might be some little spot where he could lay his head down in peace for a moment. So, down he went, his chains clanking rhythmically on the bare treads of the stairs. The walls were whitewashed brick that flaked off particulate as he brushed past. The whole place smelled of dry wood and damp cloth. It wasn't long before the sound of the production above receded into a gentle murmur that was joined by a susurration from below. He reached the lower floor and found himself in darkness. He had no clue as to the size of space that he'd entered, other than it felt huge. In the last light of the corridor from above, he saw a table with a collection of candles in holders, a shilling box of friction matches, a small bowl filled with sand and spent matches, and a little note next to it bearing the legend, "Thank you!" exclamation mark. Marley took up the box, retrieved a match and struck it against the sandpaper side. As the match sputtered, it gave off a sulphurous odour of burning antimony and potash. In its light, he saw illuminated hundreds of wooden frames with shelves set into them, reaching off into the darkness. Rather like wine racks with long flat boards, each with a cutout to hold an object upon it. However, it was not wine that was being stored down here, but books. In each V-shaped groove, a book sat open, thousands of them, out as far as Marley's little light could reach. Every so often, one of the book's pages would lazily turn, as if wafted by some unnoticed breeze. Enraptured by this gentle movement, Marley failed to notice that the match had burnt down to his fingers. He cursed and dropped it, then used another to light one of the candles. Placing this spent match in the sand, he went off further into the room before him. The shelves extended out far beyond the light of the candle. The room seemed to be larger than Marley thought possible. As he walked among the shelves, he realised that the gentle sound he'd heard coming down the stairs was coming from the books themselves. He looked into one of them. He could see that the words were being written in the books, accompanied by a low scratching sound, like the sound he'd heard coming from Linton's clipboard. Or rather, they were being overwritten, for the words at the top of the page were in ink, but at the bottom were in pencil, the ink covering the pencil with unstoppable efficiency. Marley began to read an extract from the book he was inspecting. The storm was thundering all around him, rattling at the latches and tearing at the shutters, and yet still he stood, clad in black at the gable end, watching that pair who watched the storm. Presently he saw Mr. Neville bid goodbye and take his leave and walk up the hill towards Minor Cannon Corner. Now his nephew was all alone. He knew this was the time for action. He loosened the cravat at his throat. Marley looked at the spine of the book. On it was the name John Jasper, illuminated in gold lettering. It seemed this was the book of some soul's life. In looking at the spine of the book, Marley had lost his place, but rather than try and find it again, he wondered if this was the account of one person's life, would it not be possible to skip ahead and see what the ultimate end was for them? He opened the book at the very last page and read the last entry with difficulty, as it was in very faint pencil. The noose tightened around John Jasper's neck and snapped him sharply. With his last breath, he saw the face of Rosa, who wept in the arms of another. And thus it was, on the 4th of November, 1870, that John Jasper died. Marley felt the paper flex in his hand, as if it was resisting him looking at it. The words swam on the paper and reformed themselves. His throat tightened. Had his own neckerchief conspired to constrict him of his own volition? But no. He realised too late that the drink given to him by Miss Budd must have contained some fast-acting agent of death, and thus it was, on the 4th of November, 1870, that John Jasper died. Again, the page writhed, the text flowed and changed, this time to a scene on a lonely marsh, and an altercation with a man who the protagonist had previously thought expired. But this too ended with John Jasper dead one day before Guy Fawkes night. A hand appeared at the top edge of the book. Marley jumped. He would have dropped the book were it not for the fact it had been taken from him. Marley's chains clattered with his fright. "Oh, you naughty boy," said the owner of the hand.